Hi, my name is Lauren Kritzinger. As you can see on the board, that's my student number, my tutors' names, and the workshop's on Tuesday from 12 to 3 p.m. The school that I was doing my professional experience at was at Bayview State School with Year 2s. There were camps from Prep to Year 6. The school was fairly new, celebrating 10 years. The classroom context was Year 2 English writing information report, and they were 24 students in my class. 2 students needed the extra support. One had alcohol spectrum disorder and the other has not yet been diagnosed, but there was definitely something there. All students have access to the bring your own device iPad from Year 2 onwards within the school, which was really good. I was given the opportunity to do the curriculum plan with the teachers because one of the teachers wanted to change something for the history area, but was really interesting to see how they came up with that curriculum plan. And the curriculum plan needed to be, of course, looked over by the deputy principal and the HOT, which is the head of curriculum. So in their English character description of the purple was what I was doing for my assessment. So students will research factual information about a chosen animal and use that information to write a report and design a diorama. So I was able to do all of that. However, I won't be talking about the design a diorama part just because of time. What can we find out about animals was the inquiry question. All of these were the content descriptors that we followed through with. There was quite a few. Some of them relate more to the diorama. However, I wanted to include that because I was able to see the ending diorama, but just wasn't able to mark the summative assessment piece for the diorama. Did include it though in some formative assessment pieces, but this is more focusing on the writing information report. So this was a diagnostic assessment piece that we did at the very beginning. It was just to understand the students' prior knowledge. We gave them an English book. We said, well, before we gave them the English book, we discussed what do they know about a dog, what features do they have, where do they live, what do they eat. This was all discussed with the whole class, and then from there on, without giving too much information away, we gave them their English books and they went and completed that, which is on the left over there. So as you can see there, the diagnostic assessment piece, they don't really have, some of them have capital letters, some of them don't. Not too many descriptive words, but some students did. It was collected after they finished it, and I analysed the students' work to figure out what formative assessment pieces I can do to get them to the summative assessment piece at the end. So I was looking for the knowledge that they had about the animal, their use of describing words, and their punctuation of capital letters and full stops to help me as a teacher strategize what I need to do to help them get to the goal at the very end. This was the data collected from the diagnostic assessment piece. So all the students were able to give me 1 or 2 characteristics about a dog. 3/4 of my class did not use the correct punctuation. Nearly all of my students, apart from a few, did not use any describing words, and their knowledge was really low on what to write about an animal and dog without their punctuation being there. Some of my students on the additional concepts, one student had a misconception about the whole thing, wasn't really writing about anything got to do with the dog. And some of them just needed additional support with me and my teacher or the teacher aide that was in the room at the time to help pose them some questions to get them there at the end. Their learning experience. So one of the formative assessment pieces was together as a whole class, we were breaking down the information sheet of an emu and putting it onto our planning sheet. Students were able to identify what information was important to put on that planning sheet, which was really good because I was reading it and they were telling me, take that information and put that there on the planning sheet. So it was more of an I do, but as well as a we do activity with getting their input at the same time. I then, after did the I do on the board, I got them all to get into a group. They all had different roles: describer, communicator, voice monitor, and making sure, and a manager, and the manager was making sure everyone's keeping on task, which was good. And all groups were definitely pre-organised beforehand to make sure that my high level students are supporting the lower level students, etc. they were then able to, once they completed that in another lesson, just because of the time frame, the communicator of the group had to present their information to the whole class. So their group stood up, they presented the information to the class. It was really interesting to see that, because some of the students sitting down was like, oh, I wrote that, and some students were like, oh, I didn't know that, which was really good to make sure they were getting that in-depth knowledge and figuring out what they really need to include on that planning sheet. And I was also asking questions myself to the group to see what responded, what knowledge they really knew of what they were talking about, or was it more of just a copy and paste kind of thing from their information report, from their information sheet to their planning sheet. And the formative assessment is increasing the validity of the assessment pieces by allowing me as a teacher to make a judgment of where the students are at with their work, so I can take them forward to the next step. So the beginning of each lesson, I'd always recap to them about completing the EMU, on how I read the information report, what information I get from that, and put it on my planning sheet. It'd be really important for me to, what I did was I read the information and I got them to tell me when to stop within this lesson to see if they really understood what information was important on that information sheet. And then they would tell me where I should write it on that planning sheet, with the planning sheet being habitat, characteristics, diet, and any other additional information. So that was really important to see how they could take that and put it down on that planning sheet. And if students didn't, then I knew it was something that I needed to focus on. And the formative was through the formative assessment was through the discussion and participation. Another lesson was a recap on what the EMU is, and I did this on the whiteboard again. They were doing it all, however, this time I wasn't reading it, they were taking it, and sometimes I read it if they were a little bit stuck, but other than that, I displayed it on the board. They read it as a whole class, and they were yelling, stop, you need to write it down, and I wrote it down for them. Once that was done, I let them quickly finish their planning sheet independently. Verbal feedback was given, so verbal feedback of, have you got capital letters in the right place? Have you added enough descriptive words in there? Now, once they were done the planning sheet, they were then gone on to do their own written information report. This then, before they were given that opportunity, I had to make sure that I did a lesson quickly on capital letters, full stops, vocabulary, using descriptive verbs. The words were underneath the whiteboard that were focused on last term, so that was really good, because it was just recapping what they already knew for that to put into their written information report. Once they've done their written information report on the EMU, I provided verbal ongoing feedback throughout, but however, I did collect, however, I don't have the evidence, I'm sorry, my teacher lost it as well, I provided them feedback of something they did well, something to work on, and another positive. So these 3 steps was what they call a positive sandwich, which is positive, something kind of negative, but positive, and then a positive at the end, which helps the students improve on what they need to know without being too mean. A recap, another thing was introducing the summative assessment. So they kind of knew all along that it was being assessed. However, this one here, they got the opportunity to choose their own animal to focus on for their summative assessment piece. So again, reminding them of their capital letters, full stops, descriptive words was always ongoing throughout all these lessons. The key questions was, what do they want to research and where can they find the information? So with the information, because it is a little bit tricky that they are in year 2, we provided them with an Australia Zoo website link that gave them the options of the animals on there. They click onto it and gives them everything that they really need to know about that animal. Sometimes with the animal that they chose, the Australia Zoo website didn't really have the right information or enough information for them. So if they thought that, they had to come see us and we would find them a different website. They were never allowed to just go out of that website and try to look for themselves, because they would have lost their iPads, because you don't know what they are searching up on the internet. And if they did, they had to go through Kindle as well, which is an app that helps prevent students from seeing what they shouldn't be seeing. They did this really, really well. The verbal feedback was throughout all of them with their descriptive words. Like I said before, the teacher aides were helping my 2 students that needed the additional support with. One was using iPad using Clicker, which was really interesting, and the other student was giving the answers but needed scribing. As you can see here, this is from the evidence from the diagnostic assessment to the summative assessment. The difference is immense. It's really, really obvious. The first one, they had barely any information, not really many capital letters, like not capital letters at all. And the next one, this student got a B overall, and she actually used capital letters, full stops, compared to what she did with the dogs. She used in-depth knowledge. She referred to her planning sheet to put onto that written information report that's being assessed, which is crazy because you can definitely see the improvement from all the formative assessments, from the teaching and stuff, to get them to that stage. And one more, this is just another one. This is another boy that got a C because he was struggling to, he was more of a student that was kind of not copying a little bit and putting it from their planning sheet and putting it onto their written information report. So it was trying to get the students to break down, you actually need to write it in a sentence with the capital letters, with the full stops, to make sure that we can see that your knowledge of the understanding of the content is there. But yeah, very, very interesting. Without those formative assessment pieces, us as teachers would not have been able to see what progress and what teaching we needed to do to get them to the very end, as you can see there, which is really good. And that's all. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed. I'm just going to try. And yeah, thank you.